This is a little lesson for beginners. We're just going to do this. And my main objective with this is to get you working wet enough. Okay, step one, let's mix some color. So, I might just use some cerulean for the sky. This is a little bit contaminated here. There we go. That's probably enough paint right there. I guess we'll go ahead and do the sky. I was going to mix several things, but I think we'll go ahead and do the sky. So, let's see. It's going to be on here, and I wanted this to be where you could see what we were doing. So the sky's a little darker at the top, and then it fades coming down. And that's what we're going to do. Actually, I need to move this because I don't want to get paint on it. I've got a really wet brush here. You could do this with a round, or you could do this with a flat. I like a big flat. Don't use a little flat. In fact, don't use a little round. Use a pretty big brush. So I've got my color here. It's really soupy. I've really loaded my brush up. Let's see, right there. The paper's kind of resisting some of the moisture. Here we go. I almost don't have that strong enough. Just make the mixture a little stronger. Right there across the top. And then you're just going to add water. Now, the next stroke is going to just touch the bottom of the other stroke. I don't feel right without a paper towel in my hand. Whoop. My brain doesn't work right without a paper towel. There's a little bit of a streak there. That's fine. We're going to come right down over our mountains. See how that's getting paler and paler as we come down? There's a number of ways to make that happen. But the major thing is just to be able to get that soft change. I waited a little bit long there, and you can kind of see an edge here, which I don't care. I can go over it very gently, but I'm not adding more water at this point. I'm happy with that. It's not perfect, but I'm happy with it. Yours doesn't have to be perfect either. Okay, that's step one. Then we have to get it dry. So I'm pausing to get it dry. Well, that's just not dark enough. Well, so I should have had a little bit stronger mixture. But also, now I've already got some color down. So I don't want to put, I can just put another wash of about the same thing over it, and it'll double itself. Because remember, this is transparent. So you're seeing right through it. See, I'm getting my brush in the water, rinsing it off a little bit, kind of raking it there on the sides. You could tilt your paper this way too if you'd like. In fact, you could do this whole exercise, you know, with a board and tilt your paper about this much. You'd probably be happier working that way. It doesn't show up on the video very well for me to tilt the paper that way. But I think that would be a good idea for you. There. That's a little better. Okay, I'm going to dry it again. Okay, here we are. Now I'm going to take, let's see, I've still got my blue here. I've got quite a bit of blue. I think I've got enough. Maybe just put a little bit more in there. So this is cerulean. You can see that cerulean, it's a little bit on the turquoisey side. That is, it's got a little bit of a yellow tone to it. It's kind of a slightly yellowish blue. So it's going to make a duller purple than if I used a brilliant blue, like, like ultramarine. So this will make a brighter purple. But we want a soft purple anyway. So I'll take that, and I'll just take some, well, my new favorite color here. Every time I have a favorite color, it takes a while for it to wear off. This is quinacridone lilac. You could use rose. Okay, that's a pretty nice purple, I think. Now this time I want to stay in the lines and I don't want to come down here. So what I'm going to do, I want to make sure that my purple is thin enough. So, you know, you could test it on a scrap. Let's see if you like that purple and if it's light enough. I think it'll be light enough. Maybe I'll put just a little more water in it. Okay, so again, I'm working with a loaded brush. I'm just going to let the color flow off the end of the brush. This is my major objective with this lesson, is to get you to work wet enough, and that means keeping that brush, well, not totally vertical, but you can see where the paint just flows off the end, and I'm going to work this way. And I'm not going to go back into it and work over it. A little bit more paint here. So I can get something really smooth here because I'm working so wet. If I try working this drier, it won't be smooth. There. By the way, I didn't mention, but you can just draw this off on a piece of paper. I mean, as long as, if you have sort of the basic shapes, that'll work. Okay, got to dry it. Okay, now let's mix a brown. Well, I've already got a purple, which has got a red and a blue. And so all I need to make a brown is to add a yellow. Right here, I think I'll use raw sienna. Raw sienna is considered a yellow. I already have some right here. It's one of those quiet yellows. It's like really good for landscapes. So add a little in there. Well, that's not near enough. Add a little bit more. That's kind of a gray. Oh, that's nice. You know, I like that better than what I had. Maybe just a tiny bit more. You know, that looks like just what I need right there. So remember, if you want to get a gray, I mean, there's a lot of ways to get to gray and brown. You can do it with two colors depending on the colors. An orange and a blue, for instance. But a red, yellow, and a blue in the right proportions will give you a brown. In slightly different proportions, it'll give you a gray. You just have to play with doing that some. Okay, so let's put, oh, I left out some other stuff in the picture. Here's another rock thing, formation, whatever, over here. And here's a little bitty one. Okay. So, this is the same deal. This is just good practice, okay? I've got my brush, and I'm going to load it up. with my color. And then I'm painting this on. And you can test these on a scrap. If you're working wet enough, you don't have to smooth it out or do anything to it. It will just level itself out, because water levels itself out, right? So if you just leave this alone, and this is pretty pale, so as long as you work wet enough, you should get a pretty even wash. I didn't quite stay in the lines before. We don't care about no stinking lines, do we? Okay. There's little lumps of land back there, huh? See, I could have done the sky and then done this. Well, maybe not. There's ways to arrange your work so you don't have to dry quite so often. See, if I want to pull some color up, let's just say that I've got too much down there, I'll just squeeze out this brush and I can just suck it up like that. I don't want to, by the way, but if I did, that's what I would do. Also, if you've got a lot of water down here and you just hit it with a hairdryer, sometimes you're chasing water all over the place because it'll kind of blow up and do things you don't want. So the best thing is to let it set until the sheen goes off and then dry it. I'll see you back in a minute. Well, will you look at that? There's a dark line along here. Now, there's a few things that can do that. One of them is if you've pushed down with your pencil too much and you've made a low place in the paper and the paint runs into it and it collects more paint in it. Another thing might be just when one color overlaps another, that'll be darker. This looks like a third thing, like some of my color pushed to the edge there. But what I'm going to do now, this is really, really dry. I got it really dry first. I'm just going to take water and I'm going to give it just like a little bit of a bath there. That's better. It's not perfect, but it's better. All right, because I got that wet, we'll go ahead and go to the water and then we'll come back to this. So we're going to do two passes with the water. And this is kind of a turquoisey color, which is really nice. I guess that's, you know, oceany looking, right? Okay, so I'm going to use ultramarine. This is one of my favorite combinations. I'm going to use ultramarine and phthalo green. The only phthalo green that I ever buy is the blue shade. Phthalo green comes in a blue shade, and some people sell a yellow shade. I can make all the yellow shades I want anytime. But the real phthalo green, that's a different story. Phthalo green and phthalo blue are really powerful, strong colors. Here's my phthalo green. Looks like that. But when I mix it in with the blue, I'll get a really pretty turquoise. See, I think I want a little bit more green than that. Sometimes, if you got a lot of paint in here, you can't really quite tell what you've got until you test it on some paper. So let's just test this and see. Well, that's pretty close to what I had, so I'm going to go with that. All right, so again, you can see that this starts off dark and gets lighter and lighter and lighter, and then there's all these little places in it that look supposed to look like sparkles on the water. That will happen with the second wash, so don't worry about it right now. What we're going to do now is kind of what we did with the sky, except this will be a little stronger. Let's see, I think I'll use a round brush. I got a couple of new round brushes, and I'm having fun with them, so I'm still learning to use them. When you change and you get a different brush, even if it's just a different size sometimes, it takes a while to adapt to it. Don't expect them to all act the same. They have their own personalities. Okay, so I'm going to paint this, right? And, you know, you could leave little bits of white there, like, you know, the white where it runs into the, where it gets all frothy, where it runs into the rocks or whatever it's running into. This brush is a little small for this. Let's use a lot of water here so that it stays wet. I'll get a little stronger color right there. Now, what you're going to see, I'm tilting this, and I recommend that maybe you get a board, a clipboard or something, and just prop it up a little bit, about like that. And let things kind of run down. You can see there's a bead of paint here. See that bead? That tells me that I'm working wet enough. If you're tilted and you don't have a bead, then, well, it depends on what you're trying to do, but you may not be wet enough. Okay, so let's add a little color here. And now I'm going to start just adding water to it so that it gets lighter. Let's pull some of that color over under here. I've got some streaks in here. Now, if I was using a big flat, I probably wouldn't have, but just add more water to the bottom and more water to the water. There we go. Another way to do this would be to actually turn this upside down and add more color as you came down. There. That's my first layer. Oh, it looks a little uneven. What am I going to do about it? I'm going to do nothing. If I go in there and start messing with that now, I'll get chunky things that I don't want, or I might work too dry and just make mud out of it, and it won't look like a real watercolor. Okay, so let's let that dry. While that's drying, let's mix up a darker brown. So I've got a brown here. It just needs to be darker. Let's just take some of this, put it in over there. See, that's sort of a blue-gray, or a grayed blue, I guess. Well, let's try a little bit of raw sienna. Oh, that's gonna be too greenish, isn't it? Okay, well, what's the if red, yellow, and blue make brown, then if I have a green, that's yellow and blue. So I must need a red. And I'm just going to get some Quin Burnt Scarlet because, see that one right there? Because that'll kind of want to make a brown. I should have done the same mixture over again. Okay, that's not near enough red. See, it still looks greenish. So we add a little bit more red. Still looks greenish. But you can see where I'm getting the red out of the brush, how that flow in there looks brown. Okay, closer and closer, still a little greenish. A little more. Whoops, let's try a little more than that. I bet this gets it. Yeah, that'll do. So this is going to be the shadows on the rocks. And the shadows on the rocks are going to be, wait a minute, I'm thinking. This is a good place for my little flat. Some people call these square. So let's see, this is starting to get dry. I think it's going to work out. Here's my shadows on the rock. You just kind of have to look at this thing to get an idea of what to do. I was originally looking at a photo, which I don't have. So the thing about a flat brush like this is that that's dry enough. I don't think that's dark enough. It gives you some flat, straight lines that look a little rock-like. I guess it'll do. I could have gotten it a little darker. What I can do, once I get a shape in there that I like, while it's still wet, I can add more water to it, more paint to it. Oh, look, I got water in, I got paint into my water, which is still damp, and it's spreading. See that right there? What am I going to do about it? I don't know. I don't think that it's even going to matter in the end. In fact, if you look at this, you'll see that I did the same thing along there. I think I intentionally added that. It's sort of a reflection in the water. So let's just say we got a head start on a reflection. I forgot all about those reflections. I hadn't even noticed them, but they do make a difference. So in my picture, I'd never bothered shading these two in, but they need to be shaded too. Just kind of give it some kind of angular looking stuff. There. Okay, I think that works. You know, it wouldn't hurt to soften a couple of edges on here. This is just water. This is harder to do, but you can get used to it. There. What we want is kind of rock shapes. They'll look kind of like cliffs. There. A few soft edges kind of helps. If all the edges are soft, then you have nothing but mush. Okay. Oh, looky here. Here's where some of my water ran up into my mountain back there. Well, how about that? Well, darn. Look at this. I got a couple of problems. Here, I've run over the edge into my water, and I've got an outline around that. I don't want that outline. And then the color of this front rock formation is about the same value as the purple in the mountain in the back, hill in the back. And so they run together. Okay, so we're going to take care of both of these. This is really dry again. It's really important for it to be dry. If your water was really dirty, you might need fresh water. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to give this a bit of a bath. And you can see where I'm taking that flat brush and running it side to side. Flat brush can tolerate that. It's best to do that with your flat brush. They can take a little more ill treatment than your rounds can. Okay, and where's, well, is this, here's the brush I was using. Here. Now, this is wet down here, but it's dry up there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make more purple, and I'll be darned if I didn't turn my purple into brown a while ago. So I think I need a little more blue in that. Ooh, too much blue. You know what? I kind of like that. Let's use that. All right, so I got my brush loaded up. You know, you could even just to make this easy to get my brush in the right... Oh, that's way bluer, isn't it? Here, let's add a little water to that. And let's put a little bit more red in it. But you know what? I might just like that. Let's add a little bit more water to it. Remember, water is your white. Right here, I'm washing out my brush, getting a little of the extra water off of it, and then I'm going to add water. What I'm looking to do is make this darker at the bottom than it is at the top. A while ago, it was darker at the top. Wash that brush out. You notice when I'm taking the extra water out of it, I'm just taking it out of the belly of the brush like that. I'm leaving a whole lot down there at the point. I get when I add the water to the edge, I get it wet all the way to the top, all the way to the top edge of the mountain. It's not a mountain, it's a hill, I guess. I don't know, I'm from Texas, I don't know what a mountain looks like. All right. That's better. Now guess what? It's time to dry. You know, that's just not dark enough there. Now, I'm guessing that this is ocean water. It's not very still. So, it might have a bit of a reflection in it. That is, it might have a bit of this color in it. I've also decided that that's not quite dark enough to be exciting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it more complicated. I'm just going to add more shadows to the shadows. So let's go back to our gray here. Yeah, that's more of a gray than it is a brown, I think. And let's add a little bit more shape in a place or two. And then let's add a little bit down here. Now down here, it's the first layer of this color, and so it's not going to be all that dark. We could do that, and then we could, let's soften the edge on that a little bit. I'm taking my flat brush, I'm kind of going side to side because this is a landscape, and things kind of go to the side on landscapes. I don't really think there's a lot of point in doing anything under those, but I will. Oh, let's do another spot or two on here. Here, see, I'm just deepening that a little bit more by adding a little more color to the same wet place while it's still wet. Yeah, some of that may bleed out into here. That'll all be cool. There. Okay, we only have one last thing to do, and that's the last of our water. When this gets dry. Oh, I see another place on this. So you can see I got a fuzz over there over the mountain, which I don't think is really important. But again, I could take my brush and work that side to side and probably clean that up. By golly, it went away, pretty much. When in doubt, just leave it. It's not a big deal. Most watercolor paintings have all kinds of things in them that you probably just never noticed, and they probably look better because they do. There we go. Now, let's go back to our blue. This is something I'm really not very good at, so we'll see how it goes here. In fact, let me just practice a minute. So I want a really soft brush. It's best with a really soft brush. And what I'm going to do is what they call a dry brush, which has nothing to do with the brush being dry. You see the little twinkles in there? You have to have, or you pretty much need to have some rough paper. And then, this is really wet, but it just depends on how I move the brush. But here I'm getting some of that. Okay, that's what I wanted to do. Now, let's go back here. We still have our watercolor, which is needed stirring up. Some of these colors will separate, and this was. Okay, we're going to start out kind of strong back here in the back. See, I'm working really, this is really juicy. If you don't work really wet, well, it's just not going to work out well. I think I'll add a little more water into this. Now, this should have a bead on it. There it does. I'm having to add a little bit to get a bead. I need that bead, because that bead is keeping my leading edge wet. Okay. Now let's see. Let's see what happens. Here we go. I'm going to leave them flat and dry. Well, I may not be able to make it happen everywhere. So what I've got to do is I've got to move this color down into this other area. I might break some of that up. This is just the way I wanted it over here. And I'm just adding more water to it mostly, so that it gets a little lighter. It starts to fade out again. So see, I can touch up my dry brush by selectively getting rid of parts of it. That's not a very good looking dry brush there. There. There's our painting. You did it. If it gets to looking a little bit not right, you can always take a little bit of this water shade, try not to say watercolor, and put a little bit, real pale, glaze a little bit onto some of these other areas. Now, I should have waited for this to dry because I could get back runs in here. But I think that this will actually, just like we put a little brown into the water, put a little water into the brown now. There. Not bad. Okay. So what I want you to do is practice this. You have to practice it on the good paper, but you could use 140 would be fine. So, you know, do a couple of them at least and get the feel for it. That's all. Call me if you need me. Bye.